My name is Bryan Pawlak. I'm a senior tech support tech here with CATI, and on the presentation here is also Derek Lawson. Derek, can we hear you?
Yeah, good morning, everyone. My name is Derek Lawson, and I am a senior PLM consultant here on the CATI and Inflow technology side. Here to offer some assistance with any type of data management things that we may see.
Excellent. So today's presentation is what SOLIDWORKS is saying. We came up with this idea of taking a look at all the different messages that SOLIDWORKS throws out at us and really digging into them, trying to help you guys understand what they're actually telling us. Some of them are very straightforward, others get a little cryptic, and we're going to see how well we know those. Sorry. Today's presentation is going to be interactive. So we are using a little quiz app that runs on your phone or on your computer. You guys can scan the QR code. It should take you right to the site. All you have to do is put a name in there. And then your selections will be interactive. We'll give you 30 seconds to answer our question, and then we will go into an explanation and give you some details behind the message.
There it is.
Hey, we've got the QR code.
Fantastic. All right, and we've got some players joining. Excellent. All right, we'll give everybody just another minute here to continue logging in. There will be the queue. You can join at any time during the presentation as well. All right, what do we say we kick it off here? Let's go ahead and start our session. All right, beautiful. All right. First error message we come across is the ever so common activation count exceeded. All right, we see this with standalone licensing. All right. Either deactivate a license or retry. All right, so our possible solutions here is to either buy a new license because yours is too old, transfer the license from one of your currently active machines, call tech support to deactivate your dead hard drive or old machine, and D, either B or C. All right. And our correct answer here would be D, either B or C. All right, so standalone licenses are currently allowed to be active on one machine at any given time. You can transfer that activation underneath the help menu, right? And we can bounce it back and forth between machines, but it can only be active at on one machine at a given time. All right, your VAR is able to go in and disable old hard drives or IDs from being used again. So this is a little snippet of what we actually see on our activation database. And mainly we focus in, we capture the computer name of your machine, and there's a hard drive, the computer ID. That is a number that comes off of your hard drive. So we go in and we can block that number, that ID, from being used again. All right, and sometimes that number will change either with a new hard drive or even a new Windows install. All right, so that's what we get to see, and that's what gets blocked on the back end. All right. This error does not apply to anybody using network licensing unless you are activating the network itself.
All right, a PDM one. So this error says that this will disable the automatic login from the Explorer until the next login. So it's asking us, if we choose to log in or we choose not to log in, it's going to stop asking us, do we want to proceed, yes or no? So let's figure out what's actually going to do depending on what we choose here. So does this mean that PDM will save your credentials and automatically log you in the next time around? Does it remove any PDM automatic login settings for this user? Does it temporarily disable the login prompt for all of your vaults? Or does it temporarily disable the login prompt for this vault only? All right, and the correct answer here is D. I realize that some people out there may not be PDM users, so you're kind of taking a shot in the dark there, and that's perfectly fine. But the correct answer on this one is D, that it temporarily disables the login prompt for this vault only. So we can go ahead and choose either direction. If we choose to cancel and then log into the vault, it of course will log us in here. But if we choose yes, that we want to proceed, the next time that we try and open our PDM vault, nothing will happen. If we simply double click on that vault icon, nothing is going to pop up. It's just going to kind of sit there doing nothing, leaving you to wonder if it's frozen or if it's locked or just doesn't work at all. What we actually need to do, if we choose to click yes and proceed without it prompting us anymore, is we now from this point on have to right click and choose log in to that vault. After you choose to log in, it'll prompt you for your credentials, which will then allow you access, but then you still have to go in and double click on that vault to access it. So you've merely passed your credentials into that vault to allow you to access it from that point on. And from then on, anytime you double click on that vault again, it would allow you to log in by prompting your credentials and then passing you through to the actual vault itself. So it is a temporary setting, but it can be a little confusing sometimes, and especially if you forgot that you click that yes button. Next time you try and access PDM, you may see it doing nothing. There's a good reason. This is why it's doing nothing.
Excellent. Thank you, Derek. Let's see what we got here. Oh, looks like another one in your court.
Ah, fantastic. So this one, we have an error message, error creating the add-in com object from a DLL. Now this DLL really could be anything. This is somewhat of a varied issue that may pop up. The message is relatively the same, but the application may be different. So this add-in registration succeeded, but the add-in's class ID could not be found in a registry. So what could this possibly be telling us? So it could be saying that a PDM add-in was imported but cannot run on this machine. A PDM add-in will not be added to PDM at all. PDM add-in will run, but it will fail. Or it's probably fine, and we could just reboot to go ahead and fix it. The correct answer here is A.
I don't know, Derek. I think I have to go with the D. Just reboot.
So that means that the add-in was imported, but it cannot run. So what we typically have to do, and this again, it could vary depending on how the machine or how the clients have been set up, but it's typically missing some type of prerequisite that goes along with it. And a lot of times that requires us just going back and manually adding those prerequisites. So it could have been an issue with the installation or how that software was installed initially. So a lot of times we go through and we check to make sure that VB.net is installed, or we can go immediately to the DLL in question that's asking for and try and register that through the registry settings using a reg server 32. Granted, there could be multiple reasons why it may fail, so I would definitely suggest reaching out to your local IT department as well to ensure that they can help troubleshoot what may be causing that. And of course, you're always welcome to reach out to CATI technical support for additional assistance in tracking down this error. Oh, nice. Another PDM one.
Heavy one. Boy, this randomness likes you there.
Yes, it does. All right. So this is something that, again, PDM users may see on occasion. Essentially, it says that we could not connect to an archive server with the server name for whatever vault you're looking to log into. So somehow there was a connection reasoning there. So let's see what our options are and what could be causing that. All right. So the first option is PDM database server services are inaccessible. The PDM archive service is out of date, or the archive server is out of date. The PDM archive server license has expired, or the PDM archive service is inaccessible. All right, this one was a kind of an obvious answer there, but it could be a couple different instances depending on how you look at. But essentially, the PDM archive server service is inaccessible for one reason or the other. So let's see what could be causing this, or how we can go ahead and ensure that this is fixed in the future. So the obvious reasons that the archive server may just be powered off. You know, is it plugged in? Is it turned on? The obvious solution. Another not so typical solution is maybe the port is actually being blocked. So inside of the PDM archive services, we actually rely typically on port 3030. And this is usually set on the server firewall itself. That domain firewall could actually be enabled, which would supersede the server firewall. Another application could be accessing that port, which means that PDM can no longer access that, or it could be the local server firewall is blocking that port. Either way, if there's any communication disconnect, we're not going to be able to access that server, and we're going to see that error pop up. So another thing that we can check is if everything is looking okay there. We can also ensure that our services are actually started on the archive server itself. And that could be ran through the SOLIDWORKS PDM archive server tool, or just the standard Windows services applications. Because there are instances where a server has been rebooted, but for some reason, even though that service is set to be automatic, it doesn't kick back on. So again, that's something that we are going to have to reach out to our local IT team for and ensure that everything is running properly, and that we do have all the ports open so that we can appropriately connect to it.
And always, our inflow support team is always there to help walk through any of those processes for you. Ooh, there's a good one that we see quite often. The default templates are not valid. All right? A lot of times this will happen after upgrades, switching over to a new machine. You go in, you launch your new part, and we get the default templates are not valid. This also happens when we import geometry. Okay. And it basically asks if you want to start with a blank template, and most people probably hit yes and continue on. So let's see what we got. Who cares? Use the blank template. We can reinstall SOLIDWORKS because something obviously is not working. We can remap the templates under the system options, or you can call your VAR.
And Brian, in this case, I usually choose D because I don't know what's going on. I usually just give you a ring.
Yeah, that's why I hang up on you. All right, C. Exactly. Remap the templates under the system options. All right. This sounds like a very obvious type answer, but you'll be surprised at how many calls we actually do get regarding this. In your system options, about halfway down, there is a category for the default templates. When we see this message, one, either these are blank and there is nothing assigned, or a lot of times these will be mapped to an old location, especially after an upgrade. So they are pulling from a template location that doesn't exist anymore. So the very simple solution, hit that little 3-dot button, just browse out and point to your current template, and that resolves that issue. So that is something that Derek and I talked about when putting this together. A lot of these are messages and calls that we get on a regular basis, and that is why we pick some of these topics.
Right. And Brian, there's actually been, I had a call of, why do I even need to set these? Every time I create a new part or assembly or something like that, I just go through and select a template. Why even have the default template set inside there? What would be a good reasoning for that?
A lot of times part templates, we don't configure a ton of stuff on there. A lot of times you go in, you set your units, you set your precision, and those are what we go with. Like I said, a lot of the time when we import geometry, it especially assemblies, and it's auto creating all of those part files. It will just automatically pull those instead of prompting you for every part file it's trying to generate.
Right. So like in context parts too, new in context stuff that you're working with as well.
Yeah,
Would use
absolutely.
those? Awesome.
Absolutely, and I imagine you probably even see that on the DriveWorks end.
Yeah, we do quite a bit. Okay, cool, thanks.
All right. Here's another good one that we get quite often. Could not obtain license for SOLIDWORKS standard. This one, a lot of people get thrown by, especially when you have a professional license or a premium license. You don't have just the SOLIDWORKS standard, yet you're getting prompted that SOLIDWORKS cannot obtain a license for SOLIDWORKS standard. All right, could this be A, the license manager on the client is newer than the license manager on the server? B, the license manager on the server was upgraded, but not reactivated. C, a Windows firewall is blocking communication between the client and the server. Or D, any of the above. All right, looks like we got a smart group out here. Probably seen that message once or twice before. And the correct answer is D. These are all valid reasons. So license managers are backwards compatible. This is probably where most people run across this. They install the new client software. So they upgrade the dump 2020 on their machine, but they either don't have access to the server or don't even realize that the server needs to be upgraded. All right, so if your client version is newer than the license manager on the server, then we will throw that error. SOLIDWORKS standard is the core product of SOLIDWORKS. No matter what license you have, the base package is always pulled. So SOLIDWORKS always pulls a SOLIDWORKS standard license. Professional premium are add-ins on top of that. Firewalls. We get into this a lot, especially on the servers. We're all trying to protect ourselves. Windows likes to get in the way. All right. So the easiest way to test this is to momentarily turn off the firewalls on the server if possible and check your connectivity. If we disable that and you're able to get the get a license, then we know for sure that it is the firewall, and we have to go in and open up some ports and allow some exceptions through the firewall. Most often, we go into the allow programs through the firewall, and we're going into the installation directory and finding the SW_D and the LMGRD files, executables, and allowing those through the firewall.
All right. This one is actually a nice PDM one that has to deal with templates. So if anyone has dealt with PDM templates, they may see this every now and then. So it tells us that the variable, whichever that name is, which is used by a template, doesn't exist in the vault. Please add that variable using card editor or modify the template to use something else. So let's see, what kind of causes this error and how we could solve it. All right. So a PDM variable has either been removed or renamed. The template variable has not been properly defined. The user does not have a permission to see the data card variable. Or what exactly is a PDM template to begin with?
The D is usually what I call you.
That's usually when I ignore it.
Feelings mutual.
All right. So the correct answer is A. The variable has either been renamed or removed. So let's see how we could take a look at this. So the only solution that we have right now for anyone who's dealt with templates before is to actually go back in, unmap it or repoint it, and then remove the variable again. So we could see on that screenshot that the template variable is actually broken. It says the source variable is no longer found. And that's going to give us quite a few issues when we try and run this template or make modifications to it. We've gotten quite a few support calls because things aren't working, because a template or a PDM variable was removed from a data card at some point. So it's either needs to be remapped or re-added back inside there. So what we would have to do is simply add that variable back to the PDM data card or wherever it may be, so it could be properly mapped again. And then we can remove it from there, and we could see at the bottom screenshot, we could see that it's no longer copied to any data card variable at all. Once it's no longer copied, everything is working the way that it should be, and we can either remove that variable to begin with or copy it and point it to something else. So the only way to get around that is by creating that variable inside of PDM. All right.
Oh, the famous deactivate license now. This is a message that gets thrown whenever we go to uninstall our SOLIDWORKS. Maybe you want to clean off your machine, upgrade to a new version. We get prompted to deactivate the license. So it's a simple choice: deactivate it now or continue without deactivating. So do we A, transfer the license back to SOLIDWORKS? This will prevent any issues in the future. B, do not deactivate, because I'm not changing anything. C, either A or B, or is it D? What is activation? I use a network licensing. All right. It is a little bit of a trick question there. The correct answer is C. All right. So those of you that answered A or B are correct, but actually either one of them work in this case. All right. This message again, when we're uninstalling, we talked about that. We saw that in that one of those early slides there. The activation records that ID from that hard drive. All right. So if I am uninstalling and reinstalling on the exact same hard drive, then that ID has not changed. I will not run into an issue. Okay, so our best recommended practice is that you transfer that activation. You just give it back to the SOLIDWORKS activation server. You go ahead and make your changes on your system, and then you go ahead and reactivate. That is a common place where activations get hung up. We go and uninstall from one drive. We actually install it on a different drive. That physical hardware has changed, and therefore the IDs have changed. All right, moving that license to a new hard drive or reinstalling Windows causes that ID to change. So once again, if it's going right back on the same drive, then it's not completely necessary, although transferring it is always kind of the safest route. Oh, I imagine some people have seen this one. I know I have. All right, the SOLIDWORKS is busy running a command. This is referred to as SOLIDWORKS white glaze. Do we need to A, buy more RAM? B, close some documents before the system crashes? C, let SOLIDWORKS finish the command? Or D, adjust your Windows settings? All right, so this is a newer one that you probably saw starting in 2019. All right, and the correct answer is C. We should let SOLIDWORKS finish the command. All right, as I mentioned, this is what SOLIDWORKS calls the white glaze dialog box. In the past, this was the same thing that we would see when your whole entire screen would just kind of go white and haze out. We didn't have a term. SOLIDWORKS has created and changed the function. They are now able to create this dialog, one, to tell you what your system is doing, two, that gathers more mini dump files. So that is something that they've been able to build into the system that does collect more data for them. And in these hang scenarios, when our system might not be behaving, they can actually collect more data and help us get to the root cause of some of these issues. But most importantly, a lot of people see that pop up and they are quick to kill the session. So they go in, they terminate, and our processor many times is just crunching data. All right, so it's working at its max capacity, trying to crunch all those calculations, and that's often why we see it throw those warnings.
So Brian, I know that I push my version of SOLIDWORKS pretty far with custom operations and things like that. Is there any harm if we do see that white glaze for an extended period of time, 15, 20 minutes, depending on what we're doing? Is there any harm with closing the application if it does start taking a long time to finish up?
No, because obviously there are hung sessions that just will never come back. We just want to make sure that we've given the system enough time to try to complete its operation and understand what kind of operation we're doing. If we're importing a huge step file, that could take a long time for data to crunch. If we're switching screens, adding a new part, simple operations that we know should not take that long, then we want to give it a reasonable amount of time. But then obviously if it's hung, we've got to kill it and move on.
Awesome, thanks.
Other important thing with this is we do need you to have the experience feedback option turned on inside of SOLIDWORKS, inside your system options on the general tab. Down at the bottom, that will allow SOLIDWORKS to get that data. If that's not turned on, then they do not get those dump files. So we would have to turn it on and then wait another period of time for that data to collect with the corporate office.
Here we go. So an issue, again, with PDM where we could not open the database. So maybe not necessarily the vault, but the database itself. Trying to access PDM during an operation, during login, it really could be during any functionality where it says that we could not open this specific database. Let's see what some of those causes could be. One, PDM is temporarily disabled for maintenance. The user or group permissions are not set properly, where your user or the group that you're in don't actually have access to it. Or the local vault view information is incomplete, either a bad installation or a modification, or the Microsoft SQL database is blocked. All right, and the correct answer here is D, this is actually revolving around the Microsoft SQL database. So let's see how we can
educate some people. There we go.
Right. So for those who don't know PDM, PDM actually utilizes Microsoft SQL Server in the back end. So one thing that we need to make sure of is that the SQL Server data or the SQL database is the correct version. A lot of times when we see this error, it's usually after an upgrade because there is quite a few processes to happen for that upgrade to complete. And one of those is making sure that the SQL database has been upgraded to the correct version. We would also want to make sure that the SQL username and password are correct and not locked. Again, that's something that the IT team and the system administrators would need to make sure of. And lastly, one thing that we always want to test is to make sure that the correct port is open, just like we did with the archive server, to ensure that port 1433 is actually open on the server and that the services are actually running. If the port is being blocked, or if we have another firewall that's plugging that, or if another application is taking that port over, that will cause that issue to pop up, which is, absolutely can happen. Or if the service is actually turned off. So again, if the server was rebooted, even though the service is automatic, sometimes it just doesn't turn on because Windows applications aren't necessarily perfect the whole time. So ensuring that those ports are open and the service is running will typically get us where we need to be.
Excellent.
All right. So here's another one for PDM that we may experience when we're browsing around for files inside of the PDM vault. This error says that there is an error opening an archive file. So it's an internal error that this archive file simply does not exist. And the file could be different. It could be an Excel file or SOLIDWORKS file, whichever file types you're keeping inside of PDM, but it's having trouble actually getting that file. So let's see what our possible causes could be. So one, the file was destroyed inside of PDM, which means an admin came in and actually ripped it out of there completely. Or B, the user group or user or group doesn't have permission to see that file. Maybe that permission has changed. C, the file exists inside the database, but the physical file is missing. Or D, the file was deleted from PDM. All right, yeah, the correct answer here is C. The file exists in the database, but the physical file that PDM looks for is missing.
You're not in this group, Derek.
Nope. So what could be happening here is one, the archive server service is turned off. The archive server service is the one that actually connects to the archives, the physical files, to get that information. So we may have access to the database, and SQL is saying, here's all these files that you have access to, here's where they're located, but if we can't grab that file, it's going to come back with that error. So ensuring that the archive server service is running is a big key. Another issue that we could have is that the archive server files were moved to a new location improperly. We see this happening all the time. The users are working, well, not all the time, but it is more common than you would think, where the users are actually working inside of PDM, but the IT department or a system administrator or someone says, well, we see all this data held on this server. Let's see if we can move it over to somewhere that has a little bit more space to spare. Well, they don't realize that that data was actually being controlled by a database at the same time. So now this database thinks all these files are in that first location, not knowing that they were moved somewhere else. So with all the best intents, IT is trying to save us some space and make sure that things are working properly, but it's temporarily broken our PDM system because we didn't tell the rest of our PDM system where to look from here on out. So that could be something that we run into. Another possible reason for this is if you are using PDM replication, if you have multiple sites that are utilizing PDM and we're replicating this data from one site to the other, there could be an issue with the replication, where maybe it thinks that that file is replicated to that second site, but no actual file exists. Again, this could be done during the configuration. It could be moved on those servers, or there may be something that has happened inside the database itself where it thinks that it was copied when it actually wasn't. In that case, I would definitely recommend reaching out to your reseller, reaching out to CATI and Inflow technical support so we can take a look and see exactly why this error is popping up. If we know that the files are where they're supposed to be and everything else is running as it should be, we may have to start taking some of those deeper dives inside there. So yeah, again, definitely reach out to us and we'll help you take some more in-depth looks as to what could be causing this issue.
Excellent. Thanks, Derek. The journal file. Journal file could not be created. Journal file could not be created. Auto cover will not work. Another session of SOLIDWORKS may be running. Could it be A permission issue? Could it be B, the file is missing in PDM? C, multiple sessions of SOLIDWORKS are running? Or D, A or C? All right, and the correct answer is D. This can actually be either A or C. We commonly see it when we do have multiple sessions of SOLIDWORKS, but it is often really caused by a permission to a registry or to a directory that is trying to write to. So it is a record. It records everything that you do inside of SOLIDWORKS. So it's a code that kind of can be allow text to rebuild your session details. There is a registry key under the current user under external references is where we can go in and actually repoint that to a valid directory. The other one is when you have multiple sessions. So SOLIDWORKS can only record one journal file. So if we do launch multiple sessions of SOLIDWORKS, it disables that because it doesn't know what session to record data from. So if you actually create two instances of SOLIDWORKS, then that's when you'll see that error thrown. All right. Resource warning. Available open document capacity is critically low. You have depleted your desktop resources, close some other applications, or SOLIDWORKS, some of the SOLIDWORKS documents, consider restarting. Could it be A, buy more RAM because we've depleted our resources, close some of the documents before SOLIDWORKS actually crashes, call tech support, or adjust your Windows settings?
I'm not going to lie to you, Brian. I will usually towards option A before B. I got a lot of stuff open. I want to keep it open.
I might agree. Just go buy more RAM. Spend more money.
Why not?
All right. And the correct answer here is actually B. All right. This SOLIDWORKS has enhanced some of these messages. And this in particular, it is actually telling us that you need to close some documents because we've actually hit that threshold. All right. So in the past, SOLIDWORKS used to throw up these messages. And they were kind of gibberish. And they didn't make a lot of sense. But by the time SOLIDWORKS threw up those messages, it was too late. No matter what we did, we clicked on the message, said okay, and the system had already crashed. All right, so this is actually a warning that SOLIDWORKS throws when it's hit 90% of the resource limit. Okay, so if I keep going, I can say okay, and I can keep going, and the more documents you try to add onto the pile will cause the system to crash. All right. So this one is pretty straightforward. It does say that you have to close some of the documents. So a lot of questions always come up as to, well, what is that number? How many documents? And that is something that we can't give you because document complexities change. I could have 100 or even 1,000 very simple parts open, or I can have 10 extremely complex models open, and they take different amounts of resources. So customers always ask for that. Well, what number of documents is that limit? And that is just a target that we can't tell you.
Bryan, would utilizing things like large assembly mode or speed packs or anything like that help kind of reduce getting this error if you are using with a lot of large assemblies and things like that? Would those types of features help with something like this?
I would imagine that they would, because large assembly mode and lightweight mode is keeping the amount of data out of the RAM. So it's not loading as much information into the RAM. But this is one that strictly comes up if you're somebody that opens 20, 30, 40, 50 files in the same session at the same time.
Oh, all right. No database is connected to this view. So again, here comes another fun PDM one. When going through and trying to connect to a vault, either through your PIN shortcuts or the browser or really anything like that, you may see this issue pop up saying the database isn't actually connected to this. So let's see what some of the solutions and causes may be. All right. So again, we have options like either the database server is inaccessible, the local firewall ports are not set correctly, and we could have some ports being blocked there. The local vault view is incomplete, either through the installation or something else being modified, or PDM has temporarily been disabled. All right, so the correct answer on this one is actually D. Or I'm sorry, C, the local vault view is incomplete. So if we take a look at kind of what can cause this, this is actually something that has to do on your local machine. So the best solution is to try to uninstall or remove the local vault view. And this can be done by right-clicking and choosing that Remove Local Vault View, and then recreating it. So when creating a local vault view, it actually sets up registry settings on the back end, which may be corrupt or incomplete at that point. And we always recommend doing it in the cleanest way possible, using the out-of-the-box functionality, and that's done by right-clicking and choosing to remove it, and then recreate it through the view creation tool or inside the admin. Now, we could also check your client registry settings to ensure that none of them are missing. So this is more of a back-end way of doing it. We don't necessarily recommend doing this because you are going through your registry settings. But if you do reach out to CATI or Inflow support, we could typically help take a look at this as well, along with your IT department, to make sure that everything is where it's supposed to be. We do have a nice blog on our website, so if you find yourself with a little bit of time, feel free to visit the CATI website and the blog site and see some of the troubleshooting techniques that we have for things like this that are available. But typically what you want to do is keep it out of the box, remove that local vault view, and then recreate it, and that should fix the error that you're running into.
And that blog is a great resource. We post that 7 days a week on the CATI side. And I believe you guys post quite a few blogs yourself on the Inflow blog.
We do, and we're doing nothing but ramping it up. So you're going to see a lot more content coming from the Inflow blog as well.
Excellent. Another resource warning. We get this one quite often. I think everyone's seen this one once or twice. Available system memory is critically low. Okay. Now this one, we get a lot of calls on this. We all have super powerful systems. Okay. So we need to figure out what's going on here. Do we buy more RAM because we don't have enough? Close some more documents before the system crashes? You see, call tech support, or D, adjust your Windows settings. All right. I think we caught a couple here. So it's a little mix of this here. Correct answer is actually D. We can actually adjust some Windows parameters to help us out with this. What this is your system is looking at something called the commit charge. So it is looking at your system memory, the physical memory on the machine, plus the virtual memory, the swap space that we have. And that is what we call the commit charge. We will typically go in and change our virtual memory settings I go to 32 gigs. You can actually go 3 times. Windows allows you to go 3 times your physical memory. Sour's minimum requirement as of 2019 was 16 gigs of RAM. So now when we have 16, we have 32, we have 64 gigs. We've got some customers that are putting 128 gigs or more out there. That is reserving physical hard drive space to use for Windows to write to and swap. So we take it off Windows Manage. Windows Manage tries to automatically keep this moving buffer, and we just don't think that it does a great job there. So we turn it off, and I just go ahead across the board, and I set it to 32 gigs. So we take 32 times 1,024. That's how we come up with the 32,768. The other setting that we are commonly going in to adjust is the Windows Graphical Display Objects, or referred to as GDI. All right, this is buried deep in the registry keys, and we can you can contact support, and we can direct you to these. But Windows by default sets that to 10,000 objects. So every little thing that you're put on your screen, all the graphics, all the checkboxes, all the little marks are objects. All right. So our system on a regular basis is processing thousands of objects at any given time. For some reason, Windows sets that to 10,000. Registry actually allows us to bump that up as high as 65,000. So we go in, we change that. I usually set it to 30 or 40,000. The combination of these two will usually get this message to subside. And we have not seen any negative impact of increasing those GDI limits.
All right, so looking at the time, I think we got time for about one more slide. Let's take a look at the error message that we get here. This is another PDM error message saying that we can't log into the database on a specific server. Why? Well, it's nice. It gives us a cause right there. The system is locked due to maintenance. So let's see what options we got here, Brian. So 1, a Windows update is required. That's possible. The administrator has locked everyone out except themselves. The administrator has locked out only you. Or it doesn't matter. Let's take a half day.
I think it's D all the way.
All right, and the correct answer is B. The administrator has locked out everyone except themselves.
I think I protest the answer. I still say D.
Still
We'll
taking
see
that
what
half
Justin
day,
or
huh, Brian?
Adrian says.
All right. So yeah, the administrator always has the ability to block logins to PDM. So they're not shutting any services down per se. They're not locking anything out. They're just saying that we can no longer log in to PDM. Now, this doesn't necessarily have an effect on those users who are already inside of PDM. If you have a license available and you're already using it, you will still stay inside of PDM. This is just blocking any initial logins. So a lot of times you'll already be aware that this is going to be turned off because the administrator would have sent this out, hopefully, prior to actually blocking those logins. So this really shouldn't come as a surprise to anyone. You should actually expect to see this. Have the proper precautions been taken? So this is usually done during an upgrade process where we have to upgrade the version of PDM or SOLIDWORKS, or we're moving services from one server to another, or changing those locations to make sure that things don't kind of come into this cross communication, start breaking some things. The administrator will typically go through and block those logins before performing the work that needs to be done. So it's a really simple button to turn that on, and it's a really simple fix to turn it back off and allow those users access back into the system. So in all actuality, a half day may be the right answer in this one, depending on what needs to be done. But if you do see this one, definitely reach out to your administrator and see if there's any scheduled maintenance that you just may not be aware of. I'm sure they can provide you with the right direction to take for that.
Fantastic. All right, well, that brings us up right on the hour mark here. So I think we will go ahead and wrap us up here. And let's just take a look here. Very nice job, Mitch. 11 correct answers. Justin C, nice job as well.
Those are some good numbers there.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Those are some definite curveballs in there. Like we said, these messages are always a mixed bag. Some of them very straightforward, seem kind of obvious. We like those because it is actually telling us what we want to know. And the other ones, we always kind of complain. I know we yell at the support guys all the time that the messages are too cryptic. As always, we do want to thank everybody for taking time and joining us today. I hope you got a little bit out of this presentation. All of our presentations from SOLIDWORKS World are available on our website. You can go out to cati.com/3dxw2020.